Welcome to the lecture review of my Linux course. The slides come from the LPI Academy. All of this is in support of a approved Cisco course in Netacad. All of this lecture is for my Netacad students. We're using the Netacad environment and NDG. So Module 2 is about open source applications and licensing. So first of all, the major exam objectives are looking at open source applications, understanding desktop, server, and mobile applications, introducing the development language and package management structure. So there are many faces of Linux, which we learned in our previous lecture. Linux plays an important role in the server environment, in our desktop / client environment, our mobile environment, and in our development environment. Server is going to be more unattended and handle data on behalf of other machines, like a file server, web server, email server. A desktop is going to be more interactive, typically more graphical. Mobile is going to be things like a tablet or a cellular phone, and the development is going to be more like a desktop with more capabilities for development. Web servers are going to be a server that will host websites, normally through HTTP or HTTPS. It may have dynamic content. Normally, if we're thinking web servers, Apache is going to be one of the most popular versions. Over half the websites on the internet are ran through Apache, and the number is not 65%, the number is much higher than that, but the bulk of websites are running off of Apache. Now, Apache can be installed on Linux or on Windows, but most web servers are running a Linux version of Apache. We have our mail servers, both our mail transfer agents, MTAs, and our mail delivery agents, MDAs. And our two main protocols for mail are going to be POP and IMAP. Now again, MTAs move emails between sites. MDAs deliver the mail to the end user. File servers are going to host files. If we're looking at like a Windows server, Windows client environment, Samba is going to let us do that. We also have what's called the Network File System, NFS. While it's native to Unix, it's a sharing protocol for sharing data files. Infrastructure could be things like DHCP or LDAP. LDAP is a directory service or directory information. In Windows, it's Active Directory. DHCP is going to help configure hosts dynamically with IP addresses. We have what's called ISC bind, and this is going to be more of the DNS for Linux. So you'll notice there are applications in Linux that you'd also find in a Windows environment. Database, we have MySQL or PostgreSQL. They're relational database servers. Not quite sure why we need to talk about query languages now. The select star from a user, it's SQL. And that's how you're going to query data out of the database. Normally, you're running a database server to store and to generate reports on specific types of data. Graphical desktops. Windows is the base graphical system. It provides Windows and basic primitive functionality. Window management, not Windows, but X. So X is the actual graphical desktop component, and it provides Windows. Window management adds menus and menu management. Here, Windows is what you're thinking, like what you visually would see. Our desktop environment provides the Windows Manager and the Windows tools. Compiz, Enlightenment, Metacity, these are all basic Windows management or managers. They take the basic Windows and provide the Chrome to move, close, open, etc. They add the functionality that you are used to. It switches the focus between running applications and back applications and services. Adds the menus and application launchers. Basically, so when you see an icon, you double click on it, it will launch it. Those are going to be the application launchers. We have our desktop environment, like GNOME, Unity. These are Windows managers with additional tools. So the basic tool like calculators, games, and notepads, a file manager and a file explorer, some type of workflow tool that will help manage shortcuts to launch applications, or even do basic searching on the computer. These are going to be the environment tools. We have Office or productivity tools like LibreOffice or OpenOffice, a word processor, a spreadsheet processor, a presentation, very similar to Microsoft Office, and there is some good compatibility between the two. We have basic communication tools, web and email tools. Web being very common like Chromium or Firefox. We also have things like Thunderbird or Evolution for email clients. So in Linux we don't have Outlook, we'll have like Kmail, for example, or Thunderbird, for example. We have console tools. Text editors like Notepad are in Windows. In Linux, we have VI or Vim or Nano. Again, very similar, just slightly different. Our shell environment is the main way of interacting with the system, depending on the type of distro you have. Some distros are command line heavy, so the shell is very common. So C shell or Bourne shell. There are other types of shells out there, it just kind of depends on the distro you're using. We have development tools, C, C++, not C#, because C# is predominantly Windows. Java, these are all compiled languages. We have like Python or Perl, these are all interpretive languages. So there are some trade-offs between the programs. Productivity versus computing resources. Not quite sure why we brought it up here, because we don't really talk about that till a later lecture, but again, it's about being able to do a balance between resource management and program capabilities. Library bundles, these help with the common behavior to reduce the amount of code needed. Same thing in Windows. You'll have DLLs in Windows. You have libraries in Linux. So moving on, we have the open source licensing. 1.3 is dealing with the understanding of open source software and licensing. The main objective is to describe the various software licensing and their differences, know the organizations involved open source, and what that means. So software licensing goes to the creator of the software owns the copyright to that software. The creator grants a software license for people to use the software. In Windows, Microsoft owns the license. You have the right to use their software when you buy a license. Some licenses take the rights away. Others give you rights. It just depends. Free Software Foundation, started by Richard Stallman in 1985, also runs the GNU project that provides tools for Linux and Unix OSs. GPL v2, VPL3 licenses allow you to modify and redistribute software. GPL are the different types of licensing. And then as they've been upgraded, version 2, version 3, and so forth. Copyleft provision dictates that you must share the source code to your changes. So, in Linux, we have the GNU project that kind of fits within the GNU licensing structure, which is the GPL structure, that allows you to modify and redistribute the software. But it also basically tells you that you must share the source code for the changes that you have made. GPL, more in depth, is one of the more popular free software licensing platforms. GPL is viral, so as changes must also use GPL. LGPL lets you link non-GPL libraries. GPL version 3 prevents like the TiVo issue, where TiVo basically created a product and it was done very well, but it was done in Linux. So some companies looked at it using their proprietary hardware to circumvent GPL licensing, and then they started charging for the use of that hardware. If you think any type of DVR at home, most of them use that TiVo based structure. So you may change, you may change a small part or large part, but you must distribute the code. You may charge a nominal fee to cover the cost of distribution. The goal here is not to make money off of Linux, but to at least recoup distribution costs. The open source initiative started in late 90s. The copyleft clause are too extreme, so they were heavily political. So OSI doesn't make licenses, only endorses them. The SFF licenses are OSI approved, but OSI licensing aren't necessary. FSF approved. Basically here, they tried to really push political agendas, and it got way out of hand. Permissive free software, basically any OSI license must allow the source to be open, to be modified, redistributed, and to be used by anyone for any purposes. BSD and MIT licenses allow you to use and redistribute software, or to keep your changes private and use it in a proprietary software environment. So there is some differences between the different organizations and how they've licensed their software. Free, like Libra, or open source software, are more catch them all type terming phrases. For example, software can be free as in beer and or free as in speech. Basically, we have a right to free speech. We don't have a right to free beer, but you can get free beer sometimes. Non-software licensing, like art and written material, can be licensed too. Part of it's part of the public domain, which disavows any copyright restrictions. So there are Creative Commons that has a variety of licensing to allow people to use work under certain restrictions. So Linux has some complexity when we talk about licensing formats. Creative Commons are things like share-alike, attributions, where you actually have to acknowledge the author. Share-alike is a copyleft derivative. Non-derivs, you may not change the content. Non-commercial, you can't use it for commercial use. Combinations are allowed, such as attribution, non-derivs, non-commercial, or no rights reserved. It's in the public domain. Basically, read through the licensing and review, and you should be okay. Making money with open source. You can sell services, you can sell support, you can sell warranty. Work on features in exchange for money. Use open source in your day job consulting. Use work time to fix and improve open source software. Build paid plugin modules. plugins or modules that are subject to the appropriate licensing restrictions, or open source work lends to credibility to kind of help brand yourself. So there are ways to make money off of Linux. It's just not as lucrative as other ways. Okay, so this is Module 2 in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Thank you.